Lately, I've had so many people come into the dealership to talk about the IS350. So what better time to do a video on this OEM Plus IS350 in incognito. And big shout out to Jovan for letting us film your amazing car today. You did a great job. Let's get to it. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Make sure you hit like and subscribe for more Lexus related content. Okay, so let's get into some of the styling. We'll go over a few of the mods that Jovan has done, and let's take it for a drive after as well. So the IS350 has been revamped over the last couple years, and Lexus has done a really good job of giving it that energy that it's always had. And no, Lexus isn't getting rid of the IS, however, there is a big change coming soon. Now, when this first color came out, it was very interesting because Lexus sort of has a trend on the colors that they use and the types of colors that they use. And when Incognito came out, it was such a curveball for the lineup, and it was so well received. Here's a color that doesn't have much metallic, is a little flatter, and very bold compared to all the other colors we have in the lineup. And for the IS, it does a great job of matching the energy of that car. Things like the black and gray, the way that they look together in contrast, but even the fact that the IS350, and this is the F Sport 3 by the way, has some of those details in the grille, like actual active venting for the brakes and tires. I like that the outside of the grille is all blacked out instead of like that dark chrome. And Jovan did what I would do to this car and put on that side mount front license plate. Because yes, in Ontario, unfortunately, we have to have a front plate, and that grille just looks so good without having it smack dab in the middle. Also, one of the things about the IS350 is the triple beam LED headlights that look really nicely underneath this daytime running light. And the best I can describe the daytime running light and that whole front end is it's a bit radical, and I love that. Also, you'll notice it does have a front-facing camera because in this package, you get panoramic surround view, which is like our bird's eye view, even though it is a little bit smaller of a car. Also, if you haven't noticed by now, the second mod that I want to talk to you about is this one is actually lowered a little bit. So usually the IS350 has a decent amount of wheel gap. However, Jovan has decided to go with an RSR spring, which just lowered it just a little bit, got rid of a little bit of that body gap between the wheel and the fender. And he says that the drivability of it improved and did not get any worse. So we'll see that in the driving portion of today's video. Also, while we're over here, you'll notice the IS350 F Sport 3 has these satin black alloy wheel design. And if you look past that, you'll see an RCF brake caliper. That's right, Jovan also had that painted and did a custom F on the rotor itself, which I absolutely adore. I think that's a great sort of like, it's like a little homage to that F lineup that we have. And it's so funny because a lot of the times when we have like an F package or an F Sport package, you know, we have some styling behind it, but to actually do a true F caliper with that RCF orange, I think really suits the car. It's one of those things that like an enthusiast would pick up on, but not necessarily everybody. And yeah, I definitely think that they should just come that way. Okay, let's talk about some side profile on the IS. So for one, we do have that F Sport badge and that little lip at the bottom of those doors that's black. Again, ties in really well with those satin wheels and those black accents in the front. Also, you'll notice the chrome has been blacked out on this mirror, and the chrome around the windows is also blacked out and just continues that black and gray look. Now, actual body lines. So we have a little crease that goes from the front to the back and just fades above the door handles. And then towards the back of the IS, it's almost like the back has a little bit of a wide booty to it, where this just kind of curves out a little bit. There's like almost like a little shelf there. And it makes it so that when you're looking at the IS from the front, it gives it that really aggressive stance. Because don't forget, the IS even has a staggered wheel setup, meaning it's one of the few Lexuses that has wider tires and a wider wheel in the back versus the front. So it really gives it that aggressive rear wheel drive stance, even though it is an all-wheel drive. Another thing that Jovan added to this car is the purple tinted windshield. It gives it one of those things where it's like, I haven't driven this car at nighttime or been in this car at nighttime, but during the day, when I'm looking at the fluorescent lights in here, it just has a purple reflection. So one of those things that just looks cool when the car's parked. If you're looking at it in a parking lot, you could sort of just see that purple shimmer and gives it a little bit of extra character. With it being lowered, I mean, I'm 6'1". I'm not towering over this car. However, it definitely is a sports car. So getting in and out of it is gonna be a little bit lower. And also, I should mention that even though it's a small car, that door sound and door feel is super heavy, super insulated, really gives it that Lexus feel where it's a luxury car and not just a car with a luxury badge. And that is important to me. Okay, so looking at the tail end of the IS350, we have that black spoiler, again, to sort of pull together the rest of the design language that we have. Also, one of my favorite taillights, it starts on one end, goes to the other, and when it gets into the center, it sort of gets really thin. And again, at nighttime, when you're driving behind one of these, it looks super high end, almost a little exotic, which I love. There's nothing worse than having a gorgeous car and having taillights that just look like any other taillight, or like a back end that looks like any other back end of any other car. Because at nighttime, you can't see the details of the rest of the car, especially if you're driving behind it. So having something like this is really sharp. Towards the bottom, we have a little bit of a diffuser here. Again, all that piano black and exposed exhaust, which I think is perfect for this car. I will say, so this car has probably close to 3,000 kilometers right now. The piano black holds up better than I expected. When they first launched this car, when I saw the piano black, I was like, is that gonna get scratched? Is it gonna get stone chips? But all around, front and back, it has held up really well. Okay, not to get to too much detail and go through whatever Jovan has in his trunk, the IS350 does have a decent space for being like a sport coupe. You can see there is a really high-end alloy wheel that Jovan just drives around in back there. Based on the size, I think it must be for a turbocharged Accord that belongs to his buddy Bilal, who's ISF. We've filmed on the channel. But even with that, there's still room for other things, dress shoes, gadgets, cleaning supplies, anything you need. So I think even if you were to take this car for a track day, you can have a little bit of space in there for some other things. Now, most IS owners don't really track their cars. I think most of the time they just use them as like a sport touring car. So it's gonna be groceries, golf clubs, stuff like that, but still lots of space in the trunk. Okay, so sitting in the IS350, one of the things that people will read online and will steer them away from this car is something that I don't even notice, and that is the hump by your leg. So when I'm driving, my leg is sort of like hovering right over top of that hump, and I think it's for like the front transaxle or something like that, or transfer case, whatever it is. I don't even notice it. The interior itself is super timeless to me, meaning it's not full of like gadgets that are gonna go out of date and any like super bold styling. The trim itself, we have a little bit of like a brushed aluminum on the sides. It's again, just sort of like a blacked textured bezel. And then just a really nice plain screen smack dab in the middle that you can touch or use the classic Lexus remote interface. Probably one of the last remote interfaces. In terms of button, steering wheel control gives us everything from radar cruise to lane departure, all in physical buttons. And one of the coolest things is actually the LFA inspired display where you can press a button and it'll move it over just like in the LFA. And I mean, when I say move it over, I mean mechanically move it over, not just like on a screen. And once you do that, you can see some things like G-force meters, fuel economy, et cetera, et cetera. Also, I'm always a big fan of the Lexus clock. And on this one, it's more like a modern take on the Lexus clock, where you can see some texture to it, you can see some design language, all of those things, and it's smack dab in the middle. We also have a different climate control system where you use your finger to like scroll up and down. This was really only on the IS and the RC, and I really like it. I mean, like, I'm not gonna tweak that too often. I'm just gonna sort of set it and leave it. And also the volume and tuning knobs are unique to the IS350 and the RC350. It's almost like a satin white gray, and it's, I don't know how to describe it, but it feels soft to touch. I know that sounds weird, but it's grippy and a little soft. And again, I haven't seen that in any other of the Lexuses. Below that, we have some heated and cooled seats. Of course, this one has Mark Levinson, and there's something about the IS where it's like the loudest Mark Levinson system I've ever heard. I think it's like 1,500 watts, and when this car got redesigned and we did a video on it, I remember being like, wow, this is also the loudest sound system I've heard in the lineup. Then we just have, some drive modes on this wheel. We have, snow mode, brake hold, which is super important. You can turn that traction control off, and then a couple cup holders and an armrest. It usually does have a wired CarPlay and Android Auto system. It's not the wireless. However, I can already see that Jovan has a little gadget in here that has upgraded that system a little bit. So I can't speak too much to that, but even using the mouse, I can already see it's a different system than the Lexus interface. So I'll have to ask him what he thinks about that, if he's really liked it. He's a little bit of a techie guy, so I'm sure he knows what he's doing, but I can see that he can even watch YouTube on here. And I bet you, if I click on it, he'd probably be watching this YouTube channel, because I know he's a big fan. Okay, let's talk about the interior. So this is the F-Sport white leather. So it does have some black inserts. Most of the interior is black, just with some white leather faces to the seats. And they've actually held up well. Like I said, this car has around the 3,000 kilometer mark. I don't see any big discoloration. Now, I don't think Jovan has any kids or lets his dog in here, so I don't see, any extra wear because of that. This armrest here might be a little bit tricky to keep clean because your color on your jacket or your shirt might come off on it a bit, but so far it's held up well. And this is a trend I'm seeing lately, is lighter interiors in cars. We have the macadamia, we have the F-Sport white, we have the birch. All of those have been very high demand lately. And I think it's because it just brightens up the interior. It adds a little bit of reflection, a little bit of light kind of coming from the bottom instead of just the top. And what I notice is even the dash, like this is a very blacked out dash, looks brighter because of the white. So that could be part of it. Okay, so sitting in the back of the IS350, I did just find a microfiber, which means this is probably his trick to keeping this interior so clean, is just have a little microfiber to like dust things off and wipe stuff down if you ever spill anything. Size-wise, the IS350 isn't known for being big back here. I mean, I'm 6'1", I'm fitting in here, my head's touching, my knees touching a little bit. The IS is supposed to be looked at as like a 4-door coupe, where it's not like this is like a family hauler, although if your kids are small, you could probably haul them around for a couple of years back here. It's more of like that sport sedan, so I'm not super surprised. But back here, we still have some nice amenities. It still has like the white armrest. We have this armrest here. There's no pass-through, but these seats fold down. So overall, not terrible, but I wouldn't want to sit back here for a long period of time. Okay, so that's enough of me talking about this car in the showroom. I'm super excited to take it for a drive, especially with the suspension. So let's hop in and see how it drives. Okay, so I'm gonna take it on the highway as well as kind of like a country road. The thing about the IS that I like, already the suspension feels pretty good. It's gonna be interesting to try the Sport Plus. The IS is usually known for like a really good, fun commuter car that is also like a sports car. And what I mean by that is it's a pretty smooth ride most of the time. When you wanna have some fun with it and put it in sport mode, easy to do so. You could sort of like take the windy roads home. So it's kind of like best of both worlds. I had one all summer as my demo, and I forgot how much I loved it because I don't always drive. Like I could go months without driving an IS. So I always like when I do. Already off the bat, even with the lowering kit, I just went over a pretty angled down ledge and I didn't scrape, I just did a little bit of an angle, it was fine. And our camera car right now, which is a Nissan GTR, also was like really close to scraping. So far so good. Driving position wise, so this is important because some people will look at the IS and think that it's like really low and small. But overall, vision is great. Yes, getting in and out of the IS, like if you had to make a bunch of stops throughout a day, being a taller guy, like it's a little bit of a leg workout, I'm not gonna lie. But actually sitting in it is totally fine. Like I have great visibility. I don't feel like I'm, driving on the ground, even though this one is lowered than most. And the steering is so light. Okay, I'm already noticing the suspension does have a little extra bounce to it, but that's okay. We're gonna go on the highway and we are going to punch it and see how the IS350 does for acceleration. I'm gonna put it just in sport mode, not Sport Plus. And I have the ASC on, which is the active sound control. So whatever you hear is gonna be what you hear driving it too. Downshift, and let's go. Oh yeah. Yeah, it sounds great. Really good pickup. It's like one of those engines that you have to wind up a little bit to get the actual power out of it. So, you know, just keep that in mind. It's still, even with the lowering kit, it's still really smooth. I am gonna put it in Sport Plus just to see how much that tightens things up. What Sport Plus does is it sort of just like tightens up the strut itself, and the spring will obviously stay the same. It's like a different valve in the strut. So it's supposed to just make it feel a bit stiffer. And you know what? I do feel that, and it didn't make it feel much more bouncy. Now, I mean, the highway is probably the smoothest road to be testing this out, but even in my car, like I have a modified suspension car, I notice it really bouncy in mine. And this one is overall pretty smooth, like nothing too crazy. If we put it back in normal, I mean, it's just gonna be your commuter mode kind of thing. So overall pretty good for that. Just gonna do a little bit of a downshift here. And let's just do a little punch here. So we're in third gear. Just gonna go like that. So yeah, like the IS 350, it's not supposed to blow your socks off. It's just supposed to have a little bit of power when you want it. And that's what that feels like to me. Like I said, is it super torquey at this speed? No. Because like right now in drive, I'm in 6th gear and the RPM is down to like 2,000 and we're on the highway. So that just tells you that, you know, even for like a longer trip, it's gonna gear down and save a bit of fuel. But when you punch it, you know, you'll have to give it just that second to wind up again, because if not, you're not gonna feel that power. And that's fine. This is a really reliable power plant. The 3.5 liter V6, it's been around forever. It's super smooth, it's super reliable, it's low maintenance. Does it blow your socks off? No, not really, but it still does things that you want it to do. Okay, I'm just going through a little bit of an off ramp here. I just want to punch it through here. Oh my God, yeah, okay. That's where this car comes alive. You go through a little curve. Oh my God, okay. This is how this car is supposed to be driven. I just went through a curve and I punched it through the curve and the car came alive, like better than the highway. So this is a car that prefers the twisties, you know what I mean? Let's do it again. There's a little S-bend here. I always take people on test drives here because of the S-bend. So we're just gonna make sure it's clear. We're gonna go the speed limit, but we're just gonna go fast. And it just hugs it. This suspension setup, I don't think the suspension feels like it changed it drastically, but the car itself is already well planted, right? And the IS, if you didn't know, has a lot of camber. So when you do a corner like that, it keeps it smooth and you're getting as much traction as you want from it too. Okay, so country road, going about 80 kilometers. Yeah, really smooth. I noticed the seat itself is comfortable for being like a sport seat. It's like more like a sport touring seat, I guess you could say. Again, maybe on a longer drive, would an ES 350 be smoother? Yeah, but you're not gonna be able to get that cornering that I just did from an ES 350 at all. Like there's no way. Again, great car for the city, great car for the country. Although because of it being a little bit lower, I wouldn't want to like go on too many bumpy roads, like maybe stone roads or anything like that. However, I think it's still an all-around car where if you live in the city, it's not gonna be hard to park. It's gonna be easy to manage. And then also, you know, you can take it on like a road trip type thing. And you could use the paddles and have some fun. And that's what I did for that corner, was I just made sure I paddled down, which I'm gonna do right now as well. And from a dig, like it does what you need it to do. Especially in the corners. Yeah, this car is a cornering car, that's for sure. While driving it, and this was the same with the LC, the light interior just brightens everything up. I do have the sunroof shade open. However, even with that, it just, again, adds a little bit dimension to this mostly black interior, which is really nice. I love the drive modes, like switching it from like Sport to Sport Plus is dynamite. And like I said, even in Sport Plus, which I'm gonna do right now in the city, I'm gonna have it in Sport Plus, it's not unbearable. You know what I mean? Like it's not driving like a slammed tuner car. It's actually still like a everyday car. And I know Jovan does drive this car like it's supposed to. Like it's not just a weekend car for him. He does have a truck and a few other things, but he can just drive this car, you know, every day if he wanted to. Hence the coffee money he's got in the cup holder. I will say I wish there was more exhaust noise. That is something about the IS 350 that I wish it had. However, you can do a pretty good exhaust setup for pretty cheap. NVIDIA makes one, Joey's makes one. Those sorts of brands have been sort of known for IS350s. That could be probably the only extra OEM thing that I would want to do here, would be exactly that. This is the thing about the IS, is you could also drive it all winter. It is all-wheel drive. It's a rear-wheel drive platform. And I do want to mention that because of that camber, you will go through tires quicker. However, if you live in an area that, you get snow tires anyway, that's just gonna increase that longevity of it. Okay, so even in Sport Plus, in the city, I mean, it does feel a little bit stiff, but it's not bad. No much like recoil from the bounce. If you hit a pothole, you just feel it for a second, that's it. Can't complain about that at all. And like on a nice day like today, like I said, you can just kind of rip around corners, still have some fun. It reminds me of like the true driver's feeling of a car. Like, yes, the steering is super light because of the electronic power steering assisted. Like you can use a pinky to park this car, but you can surprisingly still feel some of the road. Like in the Sport Plus, I would say that connection to the road definitely is better than like the regular one. And that's important to note because not every IS has Sport Plus. You have to get something like an F Sport Series 3 to get it. And even without the Sport Plus, yes, the suspension is still Sport, but the Sport Plus just takes it up a level to get a little bit of that road feel. I can even feel like the tires making contact with the road, and not in a bad way. And it's funny because my friend has a Porsche 911, and I was surprised with how smooth his car is in the city and around corners. And I told him, I said, man, even though yours is like the race car version of the 911 is a GT3, it still felt like a Lexus IS to me. That's what I told him. I said, the handling and the suspension felt like a Lexus IS for a race car. And that's where I think a good baseline is this. Now, yes, Lexus is going to be redesigning this car soon. We were worried that they were going to actually axe it and replace it entirely. But it does sound like they're going to keep it. It does sound like maybe they're going to get rid of how many versions of it there are. But that's okay because they will most likely keep the 350, which I think is important. Oh, here's some bumps. Yeah, Sport Plus, going over bumps, totally fine. All right, let's put it back to normal. Also, one of the things that I used to do, I don't have a lot of guests that I deal with now because we have salespeople for that, but when I used to deal with guests, one of my favorite things was the test drive for a few reasons. One is it's just nice to get out of the office. And I feel like that with like filming this video, it's kind of nice just to get out of the showroom. But two, it also was always fun just to like drive through nice neighborhoods. Like we're driving through this little area called Port Dalhousie right now. It's kind of like a cute little beach town. It's like a little harbor village with some great coffee shops, some really cool restaurants. In the summertime, it's packed down here. But even in the fall, like a lot of people out jogging, a lot of people walking their dogs, and around wintertime it turns into like a little Christmas village. And when I would take guests for test drives, yes, we were there to experience the car, but also it's kind of like going for a drive with a friend where like, you talk about what you see and like, what's going on. And from previous jobs I had, you never had that freedom to just like go for a drive with a client and like get to know them and they get to know you. And, you could kind of just like spend some quality time in a beautiful car, which is part of the fun, right? And that's what Michelin did when they first launched the Michelin stars, was because it wasn't about selling tires. It was about where are those tires going to take you? And that's what I think about with luxury cars. It's not just about the car. It's about where is that car going to take you? And a car like this, you could go anywhere. Like you could go from Toronto to Ottawa. You could drive to Florida in this car and be comfortable and have fun. You could take the long way, stop at Till the Dragon. Like you could go on some famous roads and have a blast with it and commute. People are looking at us like crazy. All they see is this really loud tuned Nissan GTR with a camera guy hanging out the side and this incognito lowered IS350. I absolutely love the way that this probably looks in the community right now. I think that's really cool. We'll make the joke that we needed a GTR to be able to keep up to the IS350 for filming. Jovan is gonna love that. And that's the other thing, is I never knew why Lexus didn't just have these cars lower to begin with. Like you always see a little bit of wheel gap on ISs, and I just assumed that it was maybe because of components underneath, like being too close to the ground. but like we just did a drive where we did some city, we did some highway, we did some sort of country roads, and even went over like a really big slope, and that front bumper and the components underneath were never in a situation where they were going to be scraping. The only thing I can think of is that maybe that makes it just like that extra bit lower for the driver's seat, like to get in and out of. A lot of times Lexus will sort of design where the seating position is and then build the car around it. And I wondered if that made it too low, that maybe it jeopardized losing customers or losing guests over the fact that it's low. Ooh, we're gonna do a little launch. Oh yeah. Even though it's not a torquey engine, that low RPM is good. Like you can punch it from a stop and it hooks nice. The upper end is where that horsepower lies for sure. There's no doubt about it. And in the middle RPM range is where there's not a ton going on. Like that's not its sweet spot for sure. So let's talk about the safety stuff. So we have lane departure and radar cruise control. I believe it's LSS 2.5, so it's not the latest one. It might be 2.0, I'd have to look. So it doesn't have the proximity and stuff like that, or the proactive driving assist. However, it's got the necessities, it's got blind spot monitoring, it's got parking sensors, it's got all that stuff. And Lexus does a good job of making it so you don't have to pay extra per safety feature. So if that makes sense, like the radar cruise, lane departure, all that stuff comes standard in most Lexuses, actually in all Lexuses. And they're super useful because all it takes is like one of those systems one time to kick in and it pays for itself just like that. Oh my gosh. So Jovan has like this phone holder here, and it's one of those ones with the magnet for iPhones. And it's great because one thing about cars is I never know where to put my phone. I usually put it like in the cup holder, in the armrest, and then I'll like go in a store and forget my phone in the car. But Jovan has this mounted phone holder that's like in the CD player, because this car still has a CD player, even though most people don't use it. And that's super clutch. I love that. I might get that for my LS. Okay, so there you have it. We're just pulling back in. Overall, great driving car. It's comfortable when you need it to be. It's sporty when you need it to be. There is a little range in the center where there's not much going on, but the high end and the low end is good. The most fun is that corner. So you could drive this car every day and never experience that cornering thing where mid-corner, punch it, downshifts, the G-force meters kick in, all that stuff. That was the most fun I've ever had in IS. So if you are gonna have one of these, make sure you push it that way once in a while. Like I didn't break any speed limits or anything like that, and it was just an absolute blast to drive. So make sure if you're gonna get an IS 350 like this, that you drive it like that. You put a little bit of cornering into it, have some fun, because that's just how to enjoy a car. Okay, so there you have it. This is what your IS 350 could look like with some gentle upgrades and just an overview of how it drives, how it looks, this particular spec of IS 350 with the Incognito on F-Sport Series White. And another big shout out to Jovan, great job on this car. Thank you for letting us film it. If you haven't checked out, Jovan is a part of Witty Wheelers on Instagram, where they do a lot of fun automotive content, and this car has been featured in a number of those videos. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video, and if you have any other recommendations of vehicles I can film. Also, I do reply to all of my DMs on Instagram with other ideas, so feel free to look me up there as well.